Well, Dianna, thank you. The host of Scoop City and the senior NFL insider for The Athletic. What do you make of this, and would you describe any team in the NFL as soft? The Dolphins get it more than anybody.
I don't know. I guess when I heard that, anytime a leader is trying to rally a losing locker room and really speak for his team, you have to give him credit for standing up there with such a bad record. But to me, my thought was, who's got to answer that long about something you aren't? Like, that was a long answer about the toughness of a team that stinks. And Mike, that's a great point you make about the Tennessee Titans' identity of toughness. Not this team. That's the Mike Vrabel Titans. This is a whole new roster of guys. The guys that were on the team over the last few seasons, the ones that played in the AFC Championship game, those guys were tough. And they didn't have a lot of stars, right? They just had Derrick Henry. At one point, they had A.J. Brown. We all know where A.J. Brown is now. In fact, I actually saw A.J. Brown on Sunday night at the Link after the Eagles took care of business against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we were talking so much about that Tennessee team that he was on when he was a rookie, where he really took off. He obviously spent a few years there. And he said that. He's like, because I was asking him to compare, the difference between the Tennessee Titans and the Philadelphia Eagles. He's like, well, we just have a lot more talent here. But the toughness is what that team was made of. So, look, I know what Brian Callahan's doing, which is protecting his guys who are going out there every single day, sacrificing their bodies, doing all the things that we know football players do. I just think he doesn't really have a pulse on really what is happening with that team, which is they don't look like they have a lot of direction, and they don't look like they know what they're doing most of the time. And that's why I think this offseason is going to be a really big one for this Tennessee Titans team. I think they're sticking with Callahan. He has a lot of respect in that building. Players around the league respect Brian Callahan. He's a smart guy. I just think this was a tough first year for him, and he's going to have to learn a lot.
But Dianna, soft? Like, what are we doing? Look at what these human beings are doing. Like, yes, you can make the argument that one team is tougher than the next, but you will not be able to convince me. Like, you can make the argument. You won't be able to prove it to me. You will not be able to prove it to me.
Dan, if I may, isn't the implied gambit that we understand they're tough? They're playing football, a game of real estate acquisition. But by comparison to other teams, they are soft. And if that is indeed the gambit, then it's a fair accusation.
Yeah, Mike, I've talked to players all around the league that are on teams right now, and they don't play hard. They'll admit that. There's different levels of playing tough. Do they want to go out there and lose and get embarrassed? No. But there are certain teams where there is an accountability and expectation that you're going to put everything on the line. And there's different versions of it. So to just blanket it, Dan, as every person that plays in the NFL is playing tough at all times.
No,
I don't think that's accurate.
The part that I'm objecting to is this. Like, if you want to make your assessments on this, you can make them, but you don't have the proper information to make the accusation. Like, it's not wins and losses. I don't know how you're measuring these things when you don't know the pain that someone is playing through. Like, you're just looking in their eyes, and you can tell me they're not tough?
I guess I've watched football long enough that I think I can tell, like, which teams are tough, and their identity is we are more physical. It's something that you know when you see.
And then you're making a good point. Is like, how can you tell without being inside and having that information? But I think what Mike is trying to impress upon you is that we're not comparing them to us. Yeah. We're comparing them to their peer group. Okay. In the same way, when I say such and such is a bad basketball player, I'm not saying compared to people on the street. I'm saying compared to the best basketball players in the world.
All right, so let me ask you this question. John Amici is here with us, okay? His feet were a little bit heavy in defensive postures. He was not much of a rebounder. Was your toughness questioned, yes or no? Because I happen to think I know what this man's toughness is. I happen to know what his professionalism is and what it is that he would play through. But did you get a reputation for somebody who wasn't tough enough, and how offensive would that be to you?
You're asking a European big from the turn of the century in the NBA if he was considered soft?
I was definitely considered soft, but it was for all the wrong reasons, right? It was because of the way I talked. This is the only reason I have a goatee is because my team said, if I'm going to talk this way, I need to have something that at least shows something. But that's,
I agree.
This is part of the problem with. I mean, I'm listening to this and I don't understand the context. Right? I don't watch very much of football, of your football, or my football actually. But it's just the language, it seems like it's being chosen because it's purposefully denigrating of the masculinity of the people on the teams. When you could just, if what you mean is, you think their effort level is lower than it should be for someone injured and paid that much, then let's target that, because I think that's really legitimate. The idea that you would have people who are paying a disproportionate amount to either pay to watch ridiculously priced or to be in a stand and watch you, and you're not giving everything. No, unacceptable. But to me, the idea that soft is the language we use for when we mean something different, say what we mean, and then you could actually get to the heart of the problem.
But I'm sorry. Amici.
We do all look the same. I recognize that.
Oh, goddamn. Oh, no. Guys, all right, relax. I slipped up. The name started with an A.
And I'm in there, too. He's been cooking today.
The chat has been saying I've been very good today.
Yeah, you're cooking. You're cooking. Yeah.
Meech, what I would say.
Hold on. I want to stick up for you.
You need some help from your black friend here.
Yes, Mike is colorblind.
Thank you. Oh, God. So, like, I think that was very well said by you. But here in, like, the American sports lexicon, you describe somebody being soft. So I can go on like a 3-minute soliloquy describing exactly why somebody's soft, or I can just label them soft, which is a lot easier, more efficient, and it's why Stephen A. Smith is going to command $150 million.
Yes, it's not easier though. You're right that it is easier, but it's not more accurate and it doesn't solve any problems for you. But it does make you feel better
like it's
and more
synonymous.
superior than the people you're talking about.
No, it's just efficiency. Soft. I got to fit it in 140 characters, and I can't fit what you said in 140 characters. And to Dan, I understand what you're doing, and this is a great discussion. But I think even you would concede when you watch the Ravens versus the Steelers. Let me take this example out to the extreme. Yeah. You can see it, right? It looks different. Those teams look more physical. The game looks more violent. Those teams look tougher.
Yes, and I would say also that if you give me a great defense, it's generally going to look like that. And I would say in the case of Philadelphia, for example, you could tell me their offensive line is tougher, or I can tell you their running back squats more than anyone in the league. And therefore, there's going to be some problems tackling him low when they have that offensive line also that is very good and very strong. Like very good and very strong can pass for tough.
Yeah, well, I posed this question to Dianna. Have you considered that there's a correlation? They're a good defense because they're also very tough. Like, Dianna, are there good defenses that are not
Usually
tough?
that's the ingredient. Mike, you are spot on. Like, the ingredient of a talented defense has to be toughness. There's no finesse in defense. No defense is dominating because they have a soft touch but good mechanics and they're technically sound. Okay, those could be true, but it has to be blanketed by overall toughness.
Okay, but
because that's what the sport requires.
All right, but if I'm looking at Myles Garrett, thrashing around on the field after getting poked in the eye Sunday, I could say, what is that? That's not tough. Now, I happen to know Myles Garrett is obviously a superior physical specimen, and I'm assuming at every turn that he is tough. But you guys are coming after Joel Embiid, and he's somebody that I assume is tough. He's playing through all sorts of injuries all the time, and people are always questioning how much he cares.
Again, Myles came back in that game, but also my problem with Joel Embiid is not that he's just like this unfortunate dude that gets injuries. I think I can understand that concept. I'm a huge Chelsea fan. Reece James, hammies cooked. He's going to try to run out there. He's going to pull his hammy. That's just his body type. I resent Joel Embiid because of his style of play. He's flopping around, his lack thereof when it comes to conditioning. And also, I resent him for avoiding injury when he's perfectly fine in a suit on the bench. I want to see Joel Embiid go out there and eventually get hurt.
Perfectly fine.
Meech, I love that you and I have such different issues in life. Like, you have this beautiful accent, obviously, and people think because of that, it sounds intellectual and perhaps in some cases softer. Whereas, I sound very New Jersey. It's the opposite. It's gross and it's hard, right? So it's like we both have to battle things separately, which is why in this Jets piece that was published today that I worked on with Mike Silver and Zach Rosenblatt, I want you to do the audio version of the Jets piece for me, because I think if I read it, Jets fans are going to feel like I'm attacking them. But I feel like if Meech does it, they're going to go, okay, maybe things aren't so bad, and we could give them some hope to balance out all the stuff that we uncovered about this team.
It's a deal. I'll do that.
I'm going to get you right now the printout so that you can read some of this story. It is a banger. Again, she works for The Athletic, and the news story she's talking about, inside Woody Johnson's Jets, it's the most dysfunctional place imaginable. We'll get to that story in a second.
You know, one of the funny things, Dan, when you talk about how people are labeled soft, when Meach was playing, I've heard this before, like, hey, he's kind of soft. Like, what makes you say that? He's always reading books.
Yes,
like
I got that all the time.
That's one of in earlier years in the NBA, that was a red flag.
Wait, LeBron reads books too.
Just the
First page.
But there's always these weird kind of things. There was a player I remember we were getting ready to acquire, and there were questions, right? There's questions. Should we? I don't know. What's he going to do in the locker room, whatever. And like the big thing was that, like, he dyed his hair or whatever, he dyed his beard or whatever. That was the big, whoa, what's going on here? And so it's funny how we've kind of evolved from that place, but we're still kind of using the language that Meach is talking about.
Yeah, it's just that even in the arguments that I've heard from everybody, there's so many accurate pieces to it that describe to me, and I don't, of all the people in this studio, I don't know anything about these teams, but the way you've described when you got granular with it, I could completely understand the frustration. It's simply that, to me, that frustration is lost when we start using words that are bound to trigger for no other reason than it's easy, and we kind of like the fact that Joel, this person who is otherwise untouchable, knows that we all think he's soft.
Juju, put it on the poll, please. Can you really be tough if you read books at Le Batard Show? Dianna is very busy typing with one finger on her phone, texting, getting to all of the information. And I will tell you again, inside Woody Johnson's Jets, this time I'll say it better, I hope. It's the most dysfunctional. I'm not going to say it better. It's the most dysfunctional place imaginable. I think the best detail in this is that they turned down a trade for Jerry Jeudy because Judy's Madden rating wasn't high enough. I think that's the best detail in this story. We're going to have Meach read some of the story, but Dianna, do you think there's a better detail in this story than that one? It might involve Woody Johnson's teenage sons.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I think the Madden rating stands out the most because I do think players worry about Madden ratings, but I always looked at it as something just superficial, something that just played into their egos and just wanting to have a high rating and be among the best in the video game. But the fact that the owner of the Jets used a rating to make a decision about whether or not he was going to trade Jerry Jeudy, that was stunning to me. And there are a lot of people around the league who knew about it. And this wasn't the first time that Woody had ever referenced a Madden rating in reference to Jets players that he either had on his roster or perhaps were targeting in the offseason. So, this trade was obviously with Denver, and they were certainly blown away. Like, wait, you're not going to trade Jerry Jeudy because of a Madden rating? And guys, obviously Woody Johnson's not sitting there playing Madden at 78 years old. I mean, if he is, that's cool. But I don't think he is. So the people that are his teenage sons. He has an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old son who he listens to a lot. And he's been part of conversations in the building. He's been in the draft room. He's in the locker room after games. The sons are part of it, which is normal, by the way. Most owners have their children part of the operation, part of their business. But there's definitely a lot of people that have worked for the Jets, the currently people that work for them right now as well, who say that the teenage sons have a lot of juice in the building and affect a lot of the decision making. So I'd say the Madden nugget is certainly interesting. But to me, Dan, when I was collecting a lot of this intel, the story about Mike White really bothered me. And we dug on this, Mike Silver, Zach Rosenblatt, and I, to just get a little bit more information about how Woody Johnson was treating his players. So if you recall, Mike White was a bit of a New York hero there when he took over as the starter and tried to get the Jets in the playoffs. He ultimately wasn't able to do it. And he's playing with broken ribs. I know we talked about toughness a few minutes ago. And he was out there just battling through all of this. And the story goes, he came in the locker room and he went into the shower. And right before he went into the locker room, he's throwing his helmet because he's upset. obviously, and Woody Johnson yells out into the locker room in front of his teammates, "Yeah, you should throw your helmet. You suck." The Jets told me through a spokesperson that they later apologized. But that just tells you about the treatment of players in a building, that I understand that owners want to win. I think we all get it. He's passionate. He wants results. But to understand what was going on there and to treat your players that way, I think that obviously is something that does not reflect very well on this Jets organization. So that's just another part of this, and obviously there's a lot more to it.
But they're still one of the best places to work in New Jersey, according to franchise sources.
Diana's got to go. She's got a hard out here, so unfortunately she's going to miss Meech reading some of her story. That's unfortunate, Diana. We will talk to you next week, okay?
I can't wait, guys. Thanks for having me on, Meech. I'll be checking this out in a few.